Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Prestige Junkie Podcast. I am Katie Rich. I am recording right now from my Airbnb in Toronto, Canada, where I have spent the last 5 days and counting seeing so many movies. I will spend the next 6 months or so writing about all of them. But also, as you may know, on Saturday, I got to sit down in front of a live audience at TIFF's Glenn Gould studio to not only catch up with my friend Joe Reed and talk about the festival thus far as we had seen it, but also talk to Hugh Grant, the star of A24's Heretic, which had a big splashy premiere on Sunday night. And now you get to hear the audio from that live event. First, you'll hear me and Joe, then Hugh Grant will come on stage and join me to talk about why he had wanted to make a horror movie for a really long time, what it's like to work with a pair of directors on this film and a few others, as opposed to just one director. And then we got all over the place. We talked about whether or not kids should have cell phones. We talked about his work with the Hacked Off campaign in Britain, pushing back against the British press for the phone hacking scandals of the past decade. And, talked about what brought him back into acting after focusing on that for so long. I think he has earned a reputation for maybe being sarcastic in interviews. We talked about the famous and misleading quote where he claims he hated playing in Oompa Loompa. He really didn't. But we kind of got to dig beyond that and have, I think, a really nice, real conversation in front of a really fantastic audience. Thank you so much to everyone at TIFF who made this possible, as well as everyone at The Angler. There is video of this event. If you look up the podcast on Spotify, you can see the video of me talking with Vulture's Joe Reed and the star of Heretic, Hugh Grant. Either way, I hope you enjoy this dispatch from the Toronto Film Festival. Take a listen. We're the journalists, so we came with our notes and notebooks, which we've been scribbling in for days now. Joe, it's so funny to start by saying to you, we love Toronto and we love coming here for Oscar Buzz, because it's such an obvious aspect of our jobs, our friendship, what we do every year.
I was thinking, we've been doing Oscar talk in some audiovisual manner for 15 years? I remember making Avatar 1 jokes with you, so yeah.
Well, and backstage we were just talking to Hugh Grant about him being here for Cloud Atlas, which was a big Oscar Buzz landmark for us. So anyway, it's been a couple of days of Toronto. We've seen a lot. There's a lot still to come, but just kind of, generally where we are, this is the kickoff to award season, but this is also where we get to see what real people, not us, we're not real people, what real people think of these movies. How does it feel like it's going so far on that front? Are you seeing the energy here?
Well, so I was at the Life of Chuck screening last night, which was the Mike Flanagan movie, which in the grand scheme of the big Oscar contenders isn't, the headliner. And yet that crowd was raucous and rolling. And I love that. Remember, you and I were in the I, Tonya screening the 1 year.
Yeah, 2017,
Alice and Janney got such end credits applause, and I think we both looked at each other and were just okay, well,
this is happening.
This is going to be a big deal. Yeah. So, and those kinds of things are tremendously fun.
Well, so, talking about the audience energy, I wanted us to talk about Best Actress in the little bit of time we have before, because, that's something we talk about every season.
Twist my arm, I'll talk about Best Actress.
And last night I saw Hard Truths at, I think, the Royal Alexandra, and had the same thing for Marianne Jean-Baptiste, who is the star of Mike Leigh's new film. She's not the biggest star who's at Toronto by any means. It's not the biggest film here by any means, but the energy and applause that greeted her, and I feel like a lot of us woke up this morning and said, okay, is there now a 7th, 8th, 9th name to add to this Best Actress lineup we've got in our head already?
And that's exciting too, just because I love a good narrative, a good story. Yeah. And obviously Marianne Jean-Baptiste, 1996 Best Supporting Actress nomination for Mike Leigh's Secrets and Lies. So there's a, sort of a full circle element to it. She's obviously been a working actress this whole time, but, it's nice to see that, every once in a while she can get these great spotlight roles in a Mike Leigh movie. Not nice work if you can get it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just not often, the award season goes from here and there's all these events in all these different places and people are watching screeners at home and you can't always see how things are landing. But in these rooms, when you watch a room full of people get on their feet for an actress, you're like, okay.
It's so, especially for an actress like that, where it's just this is a moment. This is a real moment for you. And I love that.
But now speaking of actresses with moments, you saw Nora this morning at a press screening. So no standing ovations, no talent there. But
Right.
I feel like Mikey Madison, another actress who's going to be having a moment.
I'm super into this performance.
Yeah.
I think it's just it's the Palme d'Or winner, and Neon's been doing quite well with the Palme d'Or winners
so,
lately.
yes.
So there's already a lot of kind of advanced buzz on it, and it's a very exciting, it's a fun movie. It's very much not like a eat your vegetables kind of a thing. It is a ton of energy, and she's bringing a ton of just personality and humor, and there's a lot to like in that performance.
And yeah, if she wants to win Best Actress, how many existing Best Actress winners or previous nominees does she have to get past to into that category?
Oh God!
This is where we consult.
All right,
our
so
notes.
here's where I'm going to consult my notebook, everybody. So I've got, like you said, like Marianne Jean-Baptiste joins a list of like 8 or 9. It's like, Nicole Kidman for Baby Girl.
Yeah,
who
which is playing here on Tuesday.
We're
I'm very
hearing good
excited.
things about her at the Venice Film Festival right now. I don't know if
true.
everybody's been checking their social media. Amy Adams is here with Night Bitch. Very, very excited for that. Saoirse Ronan is out there in the ether for 2 movies. She's got C. McQueen's Blitz, and she's got The Outrun, which was a Sundance movie.
Which was apparently the toast of Telluride. This is what we keep hearing from people who were there, is everyone wanted to see Saoirse.
Right.
And, it's not like she's like a grand dame of acting. She's younger than both of us, but she's been nominated a bunch. She kind of feels that way, right?
This will be your 5th nomination. Like, that's kind of amazing. Angelina Jolie in a Pablo Larraín movie. Those tend to do pretty well, those Pablo Larraín biopics.
She directed a movie that's also playing here, so she's kind of the double threat this year.
My personal hobby horse is going to be mentioning June Squibb in every Best Actress conversation for Thelma, if you haven't seen Thelma.
Hit of the summer in some ways, yeah.
But bringing it back to TIFF, Florence Pugh last night, you saw.
I saw that movie this morning, We Live in Time.
We Live in Time.
She's terrific in it.
And I'm seeing a ton of enthusiasm. One of our colleagues, Kevin Palawi, I saw on Gold Derby, shot her performance to the top of his predictions
Now
list.
we're getting really in the weeds. Gold Derby list. That's where the buzz happens.
I mean, come on. Also, I wanted to shout out a movie you and I saw together, which is Rungano Nioni's On Becoming a Guinea Fowl, which has a tremendous lead performance by Susan Chardy.
Yeah.
So,
and A24 has that. It's an international feature. It's getting, a proper release from a distributor, also made Heretic, not just to suck up to the people who are helping us with our guest today. But
that's a great thing about TIFF too, is you don't have to narrow cast. You don't have to narrow your Best Actress field down to whatever. You can expand it. You can, add new people to the list. Bring it. I've heard wonderful things about Naomi Watts' performance in The Friend. I can't wait to see that.
Yep.
So, just a ton of really exciting things.
Like a week ago, we were in the part of the year where any movie could be great and everything is nothing but potential. And now we're getting into the time where it's like, don't say Marianne Jean-Baptiste isn't too small a movie to get in. Say that she could get in, and you might be able to make that happen. Everything is fuzzy.
Save grim realism for later. This is time for pie in the sky
dreams.
optimism. That's what I say.
So I feel like for pie in the sky optimism, because we have a short time to talk. Again, we could talk forever, but People's Choice Award is the thing that we talk about all the time. It's not the only thing Toronto is about, obviously, but that is an award that many films come here really hoping for. Not that they'd ever admit it, but they want it. And it still is a huge Oscar bellwether. It doesn't always mean you're going to get, win Best Picture, but it's a good shot.
Yes.
I'm not sure we've seen this year's winner yet. What do you think?
I don't think so either. One thing, so my podcast co-host, I co-host a podcast called This Head Oscar Buzz. You should also
please plug it. Yes,
you should all go listen to it. But my co-host Chris File said something very smart to me the other day, which was they're screening a movie like Emilia Perez quite a bit,
which went over really well at Telluride.
Which went over
we know.
very well at Telluride, and also at Cannes won a Best Actress prize for the 3 lead actresses at Cannes. And also they're doing the same thing with the animated DreamWorks animation movie The Wild Robot, which is screening a ton. And I've heard wonderful things about that. And you've read the book that it's based on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's an amazing book.
I would maybe keep an eye on those 2 things, because the more they show a movie, the more people have a reason to vote for it.
Yeah.
And I mean, sometimes it's a numbers game.
Well, the animated race is also so interesting this year because Inside Out 2 is just this world-straddling giant. But then not the Iron Giant robot, the Wild Robot coming to try to. It feels really competitive in an interesting way.
It felt like Inside Out 2 was going to get the Top Gun Maverick, thank you for saving cinema this year sort of award. And then all of a sudden now here comes the Wild Robot, which is not a sequel, and which has because the enthusiasm of the new is always very, very good for the Oscars. But you look at everything else that's coming out. We've got Moana 2 coming out this year. You've got a new Nick Park movie, and a new Wallace and Gromit. Those movies always tend to hit with the Oscars. You've got an anime Lord of the Rings movie. You've got Flow,
Oh my
this
God,
animated
our
movie we
beloved
saw.
Flow.
That's another one to
Latvian
check
animated
out.
movie about animals on a boat, and it sounds esoteric and
Plucky little
strange.
cat.
Oh, the best cat I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone needs to see Flow.
Yes. And also the Pharrell Williams as depicted by Legos.
As depicted by Legos.
So there's something for everybody.
There's a big Lego statue on King Street. I don't know if you've seen it yet.
I haven't. No.
It's just that, like, there to remind you that the Lego Pharrell is
Lego
coming
Spawn
around
Con.
the bed. Exactly.
Fantastic.
Joe, thank you so much for helping me
Thank
kick
you
off
for having
award
me.
season.
Look at this. Look at you. I feel like Paul Rudd on the Hot Ones thing. Like, look at us.
Who thought we'd be here?
Look
Not
at how far we've
us.
come. This is great.
So yeah, we'll keep talking about award season
All
many
right.
times. In the
I'm gonna try
meantime,
and
you're
gracefully
going
exit.
to shuffle out of your chair. And before Hugh Grant joins us on stage, we're going to share the trailer for Heretic, because if you haven't seen this trailer yet and you think you know what kind of role you expect from Hugh Grant at this point, I think it's going to surprise you. So let's take a look at that trailer, and then we'll be joined by Hugh Grant.
Hi, good afternoon, ma'am. Are you interested in learning about our Savior, Jesus Christ? Hi.
Good afternoon.
Hi, are you
My name is Sister Barnes, and
Oh my gosh. Are you interested in learning more about the Church of Jesus Christ?
Come on in.
We can't come inside unless another woman is present.
My wife is home. Does that count?
Great.
You like pie?
Yeah.
My wife has pie in the oven.
I could tell that you are a very spiritually curious person.
I think it is good to be religious, to find your faith in a doctrine you actually believe.
Well, our work here is done.
And I will go and check on the pie.
So sleep, silent angel.
Can you fit through this? You're crazy.
We just need to go home.
I won't keep you if you wish to leave. But I want you to choose which door to go through based on your faith.
What does this have to do with us leaving?
Everything.
I think that we're being studied.
It will make your hearts beat faster. It may even make you want to die. Do not be afraid. You will witness a miracle.
Okay. Please welcome to the stage the star of Heretic, Hugh Grant. How do you feel having to follow up that trailer? Do you feel like you have to apologize and promise you're not so scary in real life or something?
But I am.
You brought us all into this room and locked the doors, and now we have to prepare for what comes next.
I do love to kill.
You know, there's a moment I noticed in this trailer watching it, and I want to talk about how you built this character in general, but you have the line, "It might make you want to die," and then there's this kind of smile grimace that you give that is so terrifying in that context, although it can be a very endearing expression in other people. Does that feel, it feels indicative to me of the performance. I wonder if that feels like indicative of who this Mr. Reed character is for you.
Well, it's strange to talk about a film that no one's seen.
Yes,
but
we're going to try to avoid spoilers.
There's a part of him, I think I can say without spoiling anything, that I always thought was a kind of groovy professor. That he'd been the teacher at university who thought he was pretty funny and liked to make everything kind of fun, guys. Get down with the young people. So that's all part of that.
Just to rewind back to the beginning, I mean, when you are given a script like this, you get a chance to dig into a character like that. You've been on this interesting run of the past 10 years or so of, I think, surprising us, maybe surprising yourself at every turn. So when this one comes to you, what grabbed you? What made it feel like something you could sink yourself into?
There was lots of appealing elements. I mean, I haven't done a horror film since The Lair of the White Worm, which I know is...
there we go. I knew someone in this audience was going to appreciate that deep cut.
It's the heavy potheads who like that film. And so I wanted to do one of those for a long time. I like these writer-directors very much. I loved A Quiet Place in particular. And I thought A24 was cool. Mm-hmm. And I'm so cool, I thought it was a perfect match.
Why a horror film? Why had you wanted to do one?
Well, I'm drawn to nastiness, and I think a lot of quite interesting stuff is being done in that area at the moment, particularly by A24. I'm still getting over Midsummer.
Oh yeah,
which I watched with my wife one evening. There were all the DVDs lying around from sent out by the Academy. And we thought we need something to cheer us up tonight. My wife's Swedish, and I said, this one looks jolly, and it's about Sweden. It looks like it's summery.
Very bright sunlight. What could go wrong in such bright sunlight?
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, we've both been in counselling ever since.
So you knew their work from A Quiet Place. Scott Beck and Brian Woods are the writer and directors. And I'm always interested in when you've worked with a lot of directors, you kind of know what is helpful for you to work with, what's not, who are the kind of people you want to work with. When you met with them, what made you confident that these are guys you want to put yourself in the hands of, that you wanted to build a working relationship with them?
Well, everything's a punt, obviously. But there was a Zoom, and they seemed a good combination of extremely bright, a little bit weird, but also to have a sense of humor. Mm-hmm. And I was happy to take that punt. I mean, there's always the other thing with pairs, who leads and who follows, who's Arthur, who's Martha, do they quarrel? But it was fine.
Had you worked with a director pair before? I'm trying to think.
Yeah, well, the White brothers directed About a Boy.
Oh, one of the Wachowskis, of course, and Cloud Atlas.
The Wachowskis, Cloud Atlas.
And Tom Tickwer,
yeah.
So it is a different dynamic when you've got two people who are running the show versus just one.
Yes. And because I'm quite neurotic on film sets as a performer, I have to have peace and harmony around me, and I wouldn't like it if they quarreled. Mm-hmm. I don't even like it if two makeup ladies don't get on. I need harmony.
You don't want to know the gossip that's happening in the makeup trailer?
I definitely want to know that.
I'd say me too. I mean, your process for developing characters, you've worked on over a long time where you do just these really deep dives into who these characters are and what you're doing. And again, we don't want to spoil too much about what happens in Heretic, but is that something you have to let directors know, this is what I'm going to do, this is how I'm going to build that character? Is that something everybody needs to be in on, or is that just your own work?
Well, it depends on the director. Mm-hmm. Massively. I could name 3 very well-known directors who will not talk about the character at all. I mean, at all. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. Just bring me something on the day. And then others, like these two actually, who loved it. Mm-hmm. And I am insane with this. I mean, it was months and months of every single line or moment, long email conversations back and forth about what's going on, why does he do that? Do we think this was something that happened in his childhood? Blah, blah, blah.
Wow.
On and on. Maybe they were rolling their eyes, but they did answer them all.
Did you always have that process when you were doing filmmaking, or did you get to it at a certain point?
It got considerably more extreme in the last 10 years. Okay. It was hard to do with some of the romantic comedies, because I would dig into character, and, it just kept saying, it's you, Hugh.
And you didn't want to hear that.
But also it wasn't true, really. I mean, I say that. It wasn't really true. I don't know how I let that happen. I look at my children. I got quite young children, and suddenly the other day my little girls wanted to watch 4 Weddings and a Funeral, and I watched it, and I thought, but that's a character performance actually, because this person is that's not me, and never has been me, and was. It was really based on Richard Curtis himself. I don't know if you've met him, but he's quite diffident and behaves a bit like that. So in a way, even they were character parts.
I think we can all watch your performances over the past 10 years and see the change, but I wonder if there was a turning point for you where you said, I'm going to start doing more of this work, deep diving. I'm going to actively try not to play myself. Do you remember a point where that happened for you, where there was an active decision, or was it more of a gradual thing?
Well, it was, as I've said often, a lot of it was just through getting old and ugly. No one wants you to play the leading man anymore. And
you're the leading man in this. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but you know what I mean, a leading romantic.
Sure.
And thank God. I've been there, done that. I love those films, and I'm proud of them, and happy that people still like a lot of them. But it was time to move on, and I always thought if I had anything to bring to acting at all, it was more in the line of characters, because that's where I sort of started out. It was doing voices, doing characters I'd invented. I had a comedy show in London with 2 friends that was all just characters. And it's more fun, it's more fulfilling, it's a bit more creative. And, any actor will say it's juicier to play the baddie than the goodie.
Well, in this movie, I think you've said that you really, a monologue you much prefer to a close-up of having to show your face. But Heretic really has both. There's a lot of long conversational monologues, then there's some tight close-ups where there's really small movements that kind of give away who this guy might be underneath. So that feels like a really powerful combination of working with both sides of what you've been able to do on screen.
Well, it's true. I always thought I'm better at talking than not talking in films. But thank you for noticing, Katie.
You're very welcome.
I'm proud of some of the close-ups in this film, because they were long, at least in shooting. They're not once the film's edited together, but they were long 3-page scenes, with the girls talking and the camera pushing in on me, which I dreaded. But I've got better at that. The combination of weird stuff with headphones and Beethoven and breathing and achieving, God, all those things that sort of arsehole actors talk about, being present and being still.
Those are real, right?
Yeah, I have 1 or 2 moments when I think I might have been a bit still. And it was great.
Well, you've got Chloe East and Sophie Thatcher, who you really have, we see some of it in the trailer, but there are these long, intense scenes of kind of the back and forth and some mind games and some mental effort there. And that's a real, you have to really work that out as a dynamic with your fellow actors ahead of time, is my understanding. So they're fairly, they're young, but they're not that new to the business. So where did you guys find your middle ground to make those scenes together work so well?
Well, that's eternally difficult with films, because on the one hand, you don't want to pre-rehearse everything, because film cameras hate that. They spot pre-rehearsal a mile off, and those are never the dailies that end up in the edit. But on the other hand, you can't, if you don't rehearse at all, you can suddenly find terrible gremlins have popped up in the performance that are going to destroy a scene you shoot later. And so we did a certain amount of rehearsal, but not that much. And then in the end, I realized that I was in the hands of 2 brilliant actresses. It was almost annoying at moments.
That works with the character, though. It's annoying how smart they are.
It does. And it was so hard for them. It's weird. People haven't seen the film, but they have to start having misgivings about me about 20 minutes into the film, and just go on getting increasingly more terrified for another 50 minutes, whatever it is. But I think they did it triumphantly.
Well, that dynamic you were talking about in the beginning of the hip college professor who, loves lecturing people, I feel like there's not a lot of real Mr. Reeds in the world, but that, men who love to tell a woman what they really ought to know and how the world works. We've all seen that a lot. And not to name names, but have you seen that in real life? And did you take any of that into building this character?
Well, the mansplainer.
That's what it is. Yeah.
He is, I suppose, a mansplainer. but of a very sophisticated variety. He's good at it, and I think good at holding an audience, and endlessly manipulative, and probably was from a kid. He reminds me very much of one of my sons. It's like talking to the KGB. Everything he says, you think, now, what do you really mean by that? What's your motive? And with this character, everything's calculated. Nothing is off the cuff. It's a performance, and like his these elaborate models he makes and things. It's all pre-existing, and those people who they know they're a bit weird, and they probably don't have enough friends or any, and compensate by endlessly doing tricks on people, pranks. He's that guy too.
And proving how clever they are. That's some people love that.
Yeah.
The other character type I thought about is politicians, which you have encountered plenty of in your other work, your campaign work, who will smile at you but plan your doom behind your back.
Yes.
I didn't know if that felt true for you as well.
Yeah, very much. Very
You know
much.
that type?
Well, horribly well now. But that's always more interesting, again, for some reason, for actors, if there's... there's a whole thing about... Oh no, I must emote as an actor, I must emote. And I think you must, but very often it's so buried, your emotions, and there's layers and layers and layers of defense and mask over it. And for me, at least, masks are what it's all about. And then just the occasional glimpse of the throbbing jelly deep inside.
Is that the key to the close-up then? That you have those emotions so deep down that it doesn't take very much to reveal something?
Yeah, that's what you're trying to do. And sometimes you'll do a variety of close-ups. But I used to, in the old days, think there was a definitive performance that I wanted to give. And particularly in the comedies, I knew how to time a line, and I just do take after take trying to recreate that timing. And that was a huge mistake. I learned after a bit, especially watching really good actors, variety is what you need. All your takes should be completely different. Meryl Streep never did two similar takes in the film I did with her. They were dramatically different. And it was very useful for the editor and the filmmakers, and keeps the performance fresh.
Is that learning to give up control too, just knowing that you're going to do a bunch of different stuff and the director gets to decide what it looks like?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
And did that take a while to decide, to realize that was how it had to be?
Yes, in acting and in life. Give up control.
Well, when you have young kids, there's just all it's over.
Precisely. I'm quite evangelical about that now, because I watch everyone micromanaging their kids right through up to they're in their bloody 20s, and you find these parents saying, "I'm just going to buy them a new SIM card," and they just leave them alone.
I mean, but you have young enough kids that it's almost like they're in charge of deciding how you're going to raise them at some point. I have young kids too. I feel like it's every day is a new adventure of figuring out who's in charge.
Have you read this chap, Jonathan
Haidt book about the cell phones? I'm scared of it. I feel like if I read it, I will worry forever about what kind of world my kids are growing up in. Did you read it?
Yeah, I'm a big follower.
So no cell phones for your kids, what you decided?
The biggest favor we could do them is to take away their cell phones.
Yeah.
And to let them be free and not track them, People say, we give them a phone because we like to know where they are. How mentally appalling for a child to grow up thinking, I'm permanently tethered.
Yeah.
I'm never free. I'm never allowed to take any risks. Anyway, we're not here to talk about this. But
whatever these guys want to hear us talk about,
okay.
Go for it. I mean, you're working with these young actresses in this movie. You worked with Timothée Chalamet last year. This isn't the age of the kids we're talking about, but you're watching this generation coming up and what's different for them and what's available to them that wasn't for you, or vice versa. Are you notice anything in general in terms of what it's like for an up and coming actor now as opposed to when you started?
Well, they're bloody good.
They are.
But I do think, not any of the three you just mentioned, but I have noticed that when you scratch the surface, they're quite troubled in a way that I don't remember actors in their 20s being troubled when I was in my 20s. I think that's worrying. And my personal feeling is that Jonathan Haidt's right. That,
Well, do you think it's the media, or like social media plus media, like the spotlight that they're under now, that wasn't the same in the 90s?
Particularly if you're in the spotlight or semi in the spotlight, and then, there's this gravitational pull to just check social media and, what's it saying about me? And then, and we know the way social media works now. It feeds off, it loves a storm.
Mm-hmm.
The last 8 or 9 outings I've had, that you notice there's always a storm.
So you do see the storms. You don't cut yourself off from it entirely.
My people see the storm. And I say to them, it's okay. Honestly, this is what the algorithms create. They take perhaps an interview, they might take this interview and cunningly take away context, tone, particularly humor, and find some little tiny bit that is by itself looks quite scandalous or controversial. And that becomes the truth. That's, what was it? The Oompa Loompa, I did some press conference with the rest of the cast, and everyone was answering questions about how much they loved doing it. We love doing it. I love working out. Blah, blah. So just as a joke at the end, when they said, "What about you, Hugh?" I said, "Oh no, I hated it." To get a laugh in the room.
I've seen that headline out there presented as fact.
That is now fact. Mm-hmm. Hugh Grant hated playing the Oompa Loompa.
Would you like to set the record straight here?
Yeah,
as a
I
world
love
exclusive?
playing the bloody Oompa Loompa.
I'm so glad. I loved watching it.
Oh, thank you. But that's how it works. So I think you've got to be quite, unfortunately, rather sort of careful now, if you care about that. But I think I've developed an immunity. These are ridiculous little storms that blow through.
Well, and you've also done so much work on really serious press violations. The Hacked Off campaign has taken up a lot of your time, 10 years now at least. So do you feel like you're keeping your eye on the real issue in media coverage, and the kind of the smaller storms feel tiny compared to that?
Yes. Good. Anything about yourself is or should be kept in strict proportion. It's not important. There are bigger issues in life, and it's quite soothing to try and keep that sense of proportion.
Does that still feel, not a focus because you're doing great acting work as well, but the work with the Hacked Off campaign, does that still feel like a really essential part of what's, for the next 10 years for you?
Yes, it does. But although it's, originally that was about the way the British newspapers run our country and have run our country for 30, 40 years, that politicians in our country, when making key decisions about policy, their first criteria is not what's good for the country. It's how will this look in the Daily Mail and or the Sun. And I think that's tragic, and we think that's tragic, and that they're too powerful and they've been allowed to live above the law, and that's why they were in fact abusing people with children who'd been killed in terrorist incidents or whatever like that, and that's why we've been campaigning. But that now also blends into the impairment of public discourse of democracy by the algorithms of social media. For me, I can get as angry about those now.
Oh yeah, does that feel like the next step then? That's what the
yes,
the fight needs to
I'm
be?
sitting there cheering on, for instance, the EU for really taking on the social media platforms and saying you can't just say I'm not a publisher, I'm just a platform. It's how unmanly. You've got one life, you've made shitloads of money anyway. Man up and say, actually, we won't have anything. We won't have terrorism. We won't have things encouraging young girls to harm themselves or, make themselves absurdly thin and everything like that. In the end, it's just about money. It's not about free speech. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in the U.S., we're learning more about, media that's Russian disinformation campaigns. And, please clap for him also. It's your stump speech, right? Your political campaign speech.
What's that?
It feels like you're running for office. They're getting the applause. You got your lines ready.
Well, I'm a grumpy old man with endless opinions.
We talked about how you kind of, in your acting career, kind of learned to lean into what, was important to you. But I'm I'm curious for the Hacked Off campaign, or just in general, when did you learn that you have a platform as an actor, as someone who's well known, and that you wanted to use it and how to use it? Did that take a lot of figuring out?
Yes, I much prefer actors who shut up, and always was that actor. And I used to roll my eyes at preaching lovies, and I still do to a certain extent. And who do you think you are? Privileged, overpaid. I think there's a lot in that. But I got very angry about the way the British press was running the country. I got very angry about the abuse of, I don't know if you remember the Millie Dowler scandal in Britain. This was a young girl who was abducted, and then one of our newspapers hacked her phone, and it gave her parents false hope that she was alive, and it was scandalized the whole public. And on that wave of outrage, I did finally put my head over the parapet and started speaking publicly. And I was even made to have a bloody Twitter account. I regret that. And yes, of course, it's a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, great, people will listen just because there's that famous person of Love Actually. And even august BBC news programs, the great Newsnight or Question Time, they'll have me on to talk about this situation or this issue, when they won't have someone much more learned on the subject, or someone with a much more heartbreaking and powerful story, because they also are enthralled to the mistaken idea that people who've been in the public eye are going to increase their viewership. So on the one hand, you've got that, but on the other hand, you do look like a spoiled twat, because why do you think you're so clever or important, and you just overpaid Lovey? I get that argument.
But there's no going back now, it seems like. Now that you know you can make this difference in this way, you can't undo it.
Well, you can throttle back, but I will never throttle back on this particular issue. And, for me, one of the great things about it is the people I've met doing Hacked Off, this curious bunch of academics, lawyers, and these wonderful people with very, very sad stories, not at all from the world of show business or celebrity or anything like that, have become the greatest friends I've made in my life. And we're a very, very close-knit bunch. And that's been lovely for me.
Yeah.
Just when I get my most cynical about mankind or human beings, I think of that group, and I think, no, there are people I like.
That's a great feeling.
Yeah.
Do you ever have actor friends who are like, what are you doing? Why do you keep going on the news? Like, just go home.
Yes, or my brother. I think it falls to me as your older brother to say, watch out.
It's too late for him.
Yeah, too late.
I mean, for a while, it seemed like you were really focusing on that work. You were, not scaling back from acting, but it wasn't. But in the last couple of years, you pop up for, a small role in Glass Onion because it seems like it's fun to be there for a day.
Yeah.
Like, has a new balance come in for you, or just better stuff being offered to you that makes you feel like going back to the screen is more worth it than it was before?
There was a lull when I was really just doing Hacked Off, it's true. But it was partly Hollywood after the something about the Morgans, just thought, well, that's the end of him. And
one movie, really? That's all it took?
Yeah. All my great friends in Hollywood, the heads of studios who used to call me, I never heard from any of them again.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a wonderful cliche come true. And then gradually, after a few years, interesting stuff started to happen. Probably beginning with the Wachowskis.
Yeah.
And that built and built.
Did that surprise you when that moment happened, or had you paid enough attention to all the cynical Hollywood stories to be like, well, one day you're up, one day you're down?
It was definitely to be expected, but it's still quite a little shock when it happens. Yeah.
So when you show up in Glass Onion for a day, you reunite with Paul King, you do a couple films with him. Like, when you build those relationships with filmmakers or creators that you like, do you just say, "Oh, sure, I'll go on set with you, whatever it is"? Like, are you at a point where you can make choices like that just to work with people who you like and see how it goes?
Yeah, well, everything's a punt. It's always a punt. You don't know when you sign up if you're going to get on with the people, and that you above all, you don't know if you can play the role, but you get a feeling. You got a feeling that you might be able to. I've had one experience where I was wrong.
Ooh.
And as it came closer and closer, I thought, I don't know how to fucking do this. I don't know how to do it. And that was terrible.
You're not going to say what it was?
No. No.
What do you learn
with great apology, I just said, you should get someone else. And,
you
they
didn't do the film?
I didn't do it, no.
Oh.
Yeah.
What do you learn
That
from
was
something
fun.
like that? Because you have to take the risk, like you said. Like
Yeah,
it
you gotta
has to
take
be
the
a
risk.
gamble. But so when you do it and it doesn't work out,
I probably should have done it anyway. Because sometimes when you're, oddly enough, I've found when you're not 100% comfortable in the role, it actually comes over quite well. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when you think, I'm bloody brilliant in this, you're rubbish.
so you said that you get away from the nerves by doing all the amount of prep, but is fear an essential element on some level of saying, all right, let's see how this goes?
I don't know if fear is essential. Fear really is the enemy. I do believe in film acting. I watch some of those, total geniuses, the De Niro's and the Robert Duvals, the Gene Hackmans, and they're just so calm. They're so calm in front of the camera, and the camera just eats it up. And so I do think nerves are a nightmare. I bore every actor I ever worked with. Do you get nervous in your close-up? Do you feel a bit tight? Meryl Streep does quite a good imitation of me asking that question over and over again. Meryl, do you get a bit tight on a close-up?
So preparing to talk to you, I watched Morris, which if you're British, you call it that. And there's a lot of close-ups in that. You're very young, so your first film, I think.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stillness in those close-ups. Like there's a moment where you deliver just the very simple line, I love you, in like the most convincing way possible. And I wonder if it feels like that when you look at that or you think of it, does it feel like you were convincing in that time, or do you feel like
No,
you'd be
I
better
felt
at it now?
uncomfortable. There's one shot in that film where I remember thinking, this is how I should have done it. And I've screwed up the whole performance in the whole film. I was never completely comfortable, and yet it seemed to work.
Do you credit that to editing and directing, or do you think there was something that maybe even you didn't know that you had?
There's a mysterious, very mysterious alchemy between role and actor that sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. And in that case, I think it sort of did work. And it's not necessarily to do with how skillful a performer you are. It's just the camera can see something inside you that absolutely meshes with that particular role, and it all comes alive.
Well, you hear about actors, and maybe like De Niro, like you were saying, who just kind of know what the camera's going to see. Like they can, in their head, they understand what the camera sees. Do you feel like you've learned a little bit about that over time, of what's going to show up on camera and what you can give it?
Yes. And I was in the editing room for a few films, and that was invaluable, completely invaluble.
I feel like that'd be torture for a lot of people.
Yes, well, believe me, the first week or two is ghastly, but after that you get used to it, and then you really learn. You learn what De Niro is a very good example. I mean, I'm sure you know that the famous bit in Taxi Driver with him standing in front of the mirror, saying, "What is it? You looking at me? Or
You're talking to me.
You're talking to me," and he does it over and over again. Was in fact just him trying different ways of saying it, assuming that Scorsese were going to take one of them.
Yeah.
And then he just liked them all. So that's acting for with the editing in your head. Quite difficult for the off-screen actor to know when to say their line.
Yeah.
But understanding the medium is quite important.
Do you know, do you get like a gut feeling when you step off of a set or wrap a film or something where you're like, okay, that went well. Like I know I got what I needed there.
Well, as I said earlier, there are days you go home thinking, rather good.
And it was not good.
It's very dangerous. and I've known other times. I remember doing a romantic comedy with Sandra Bullock, and there was a key moment that we couldn't make work, and was rewritten, and we shot it one night, and it was rather expensive, and I was a bit nervous about it, and then we watched it in dailies, and it was awful. And, Christ, we've screwed the whole film. Actually, it's one of the best scenes in the film. So you can't tell till it's all put together, and what you really can't, and at least I can't tell anything till I've seen it with an audience or just one person.
Wow.
You could get the cleaning lady to come in and watch a cut, and suddenly you see what the film is. That you can't when you know the script inside out, and you've been sitting in the editing room for 3 months. You have no idea what you've got.
Yeah.
Until it's a real human watches it.
Yeah. I mean, I think Heretic is such a fantastic example of an inventive, original movie. It's going in theaters. It's the kind of thing that I think 3 or 4 years ago in the pandemic, we worried we would lose from theaters entirely. I think there's been a lot of panic about, is the industry still going to support interesting movies, new filmmakers? Like, do you sense optimism, not just around this movie, but in general, that like we can still figure out how to make good movies and interesting stuff and keep this art form alive?
I so hope that that's true.
Yeah.
I'm so sad. I mean, my local cinema just shut down. I can't bear it.
Wow.
And I don't understand the instinct to prefer to stay at home trying to remember your username and bloody password to Disney Plus, rather than going down to the Fulham Road ABC and watching a film amongst people, and picking up their reaction.
Yeah.
I cannot understand it. But maybe part of the problem was the product, and that you are right. Films that are A, more daring, and B, about people might be coming back and right in the vanguard. Good old A24, so well done them.
Well, and you're very cool just like them, so it makes sense.
What's that?
You're very cool just like A24,
Very,
as you
very
said,
cool, yeah.
as you said at the beginning.
Exactly.
So Heretic will play for an audience here at TIFF tomorrow. Are you what's your strategy for seeing it with an audience, for seeing yourself? You can stay through the whole thing. You have to stay in the back. How do you handle it?
Well, it'll be terrifying. Yeah.
But you want to see it with an audience.
Yeah,
it sounds
definitely.
Like.
Yeah.
Even when it's yourself,
Yeah, and I'll panic and I'll have a meltdown afterwards. But then it gets shown again the following night, and I might be calmer for that one. Yeah.
But do you feel like, I mean, not that you'll make nothing but horror movies after this, but does this feel like a step in a different direction for you, in a direction you want to follow in going forward, what the next 10 years might look like?
I'd like to make cool films. Yeah.
I feel like we might have to end it there.
Yeah.
That might be the perfect closing line. Well, everyone should see Heretic tomorrow here at TIFF. You'll be there. And thank you so much for joining me here on stage. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
That does it for this week's episode. Next week's podcast will be coming out on Monday as a special Emmys edition, so keep an eye out for that. This show is edited by Brett Fuchs and co-produced by Brett Fuchs and me. Our theme music is by Dave Gonzalez. Thanks again to my live show co-host Joe Reed, to my guest Hugh Grant, and once again to TIFF. Get the Prestige Junkie newsletter by going to theankler.com and subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, where once again you can watch video of this live edition. You can also subscribe on Apple or anywhere else you get your podcasts. We will see you next week.